and welcome to Optics, featured artist in the Griffin Gallery at WinCAM. I'm Krista Dix, the Executive Director of the Griffin Museum, and we're so pleased to have you with us for a conversation with Nick Ortoleva. The Griffin Museum is based in Winchester, including our satellite gallery here at WinCAM. In Ortoleva's exhibition, To You from Seoul, he returns to his native Korea to learn about, observe, and understand the contemporary landscape, allowing him to continue to discover what this place can hold for the individual. Nick Ortoleva, born in Seoul, grew up in central Massachusetts and currently resides in Boston. He received a BFA in photography from MassArt. Ortoleva uses the camera to shape a fragmented narrative that often reflects on personal experiences and relationships with the communities where he has found kinship. He frequently revisits stories passed down through family as he continues to write a memoir of his own, warping perception, color, and light. In his most recent work, he explores family archives and returns to Seoul for the first time, meditating on what place can hold for the individual as a means to discover oneself. Welcome, Nick. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Krista. It's great to be here.
So tell me a little bit about To You from Seoul. Where did the idea come from? How did the journey begin?
Yeah, so it all started a couple of years ago. I started to think a little bit more about this part of my identity that I don't think that I had reflected on too much in the past. Growing up and being adopted, I learned a lot from my parents' relatives and their stories that they were told and passed down to me. And so I spent a lot of time sort of reflecting on them and that part of my identity. But it wasn't until a couple of years ago I started to conceptualize the project, and sort of in tandem with that, I also got a chance to listen in and sit in for a presentation given by some alumni at school in my undergrad program that talked a little bit about this trip that they had taken on the Case Beer grant that I received to do this trip. Mm-hmm. And that sort of got the gears turning a little bit for me to really start to explore this as an actual trip rather than this idea of a trip, and plan for it all out and get to writing on my grant proposal. And I really started to think about it, and that kind of made it all seem a little bit more possible as an end goal.
So you were born in Seoul. When did you move to the U.S.?
Yeah, so I was born in Seoul, and I spent 6 months there as an infant before I arrived to the U.S. So I've practically lived here my whole life.
Yeah. So how does that? How do you reconcile that being more American, I guess, in a way than Korean, or how do you straddle that line, or how do you find your sense of identity? Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I think more and more to this day, I start to think about that and kind of try to sit with this sort of dual identity feeling. I like to think that, ethnically, I'm Korean, and for a really long time, that wasn't a huge part of my life. And then sort of culturally, I grew up in an American household, and my parents and their family were immigrated from Italy or Ireland, so I grew up a lot kind of understanding that culture, I guess, if you will. So how did they support you in connecting with your Korean heritage?
Yeah, that's another great question. Both my parents, my mom and my dad, from the very beginning, since as long as I could remember, have always been really supportive in me wanting to explore this part of my identity. They've always been open to talking about it, and yeah, they've been there to help in any way they could, essentially. My mom actually had gone to Korea herself when she adopted my younger brother from there, so she actually had things that were brought back from Korea, and she had saved things that were sent with me when I was an infant. And so she's always had this little treasure trove of things that were from, I guess, my childhood in a way, in my time in Korea. So they've always been really open and willing to talk about what I think some people might not be comfortable talking about.
So let's talk about your travel to Korea in order to make this series or to have that conversation. How did you navigate that? Are you a native Korean speaker at this point, or did you have connections already to Korea that allowed for an easier passage, or were you like me when I just went a few months ago and landed in Korea and I was like, okay, here I am, what's happening?
Yeah, so I am not a native Korean speaker. I don't know too much Korean at all, actually. Again, a lot of it was something very new to me that I started to explore and research and try to like and sort of embrace and insert myself into. So yeah, I don't speak Korean. I'd like to learn too, but yeah, it was a little tricky getting there because I didn't really have a lot of connections. One thing that I did do, which I think helped with that sort of transition into this project there, was I did reach out to people or ask if people had connections there that I could then connect with myself.
So did you start with a photographic community and go from there?
Yeah. So I put I remember I posted about it like a month or two before I went there. And it was like, if anybody has any connections there, whether they're an artist or you have family there, reach out to me. I'd love to be able to connect with people and meet people. And I think through those connections and being able to meet up with people, my circle sort of expanded a bit because I'd meet friends of friends or professors of people and mentors and stuff like that. So I think that's how I was able to sort of expand out into Seoul. So
we all have dream ideas of what something's going to look like or feel like or taste like, or in our way of seeing, or I grew up in California, so to me the Hollywood view of how things work kind of is embedded in who I am and how I think about things. How was the idea of going back to Korea versus what it was like when you got there?
I didn't really know what to expect, I'll be honest.
That's good.
A lot of it was just sort of me wanting to embrace whatever would unfold there. A large part of it was me wanting to go and immerse myself in the contemporary culture to really get a basic understanding and to be able to explore the museums and be able to hear the language and eat the food and try to meet as many people as I could, whether young people and old people. From all walks. A lot of it was just embracing a lot of new things for me, and what I did know going there was it was a massive metropolitan city that was very well connected and sort of had these distinct districts where you'd have like newer developed districts and where there was a lot of like higher residential or like big corporations, and then smaller districts that were sort of kept the way they were when they were first developed. And I think going there, I was able to see a lot of that. I was able to see the different distinct districts in places within the city and sort of explore each one of those. But what I didn't really expect is how much they'd sort of meld over and mend, and sort of I would walk district to district and sort of the transition would be so seamless to some of them where I couldn't tell where I was or exactly in the city, which I thought was really interesting.
Did you have specific benchmarks? Did you go with a shot list or any type of specific, I want to get this, I need to see this, this has to be part of the project? Had you fleshed out the project before you landed? That's
a good question. When I went there, I had a rough list of places I wanted to go for sure. A lot of it was actually referenced from an album that my mom had made when she spent a week in Seoul, again, to get my younger brother. She had taken photos for us. She made an album of places she went. She went to where my brother was born. She went to where I was born. And so a lot of the shots that I ended up taking at my trip, during my trip, were actually me replicating those exact places my mom had gone. So I knew that I wanted to do that when I got there. And from there, I kind of wasn't sure how or what shape it would take to expand from there. But I'd set out to replicate or reproduce in the same exact place that she had stood, or in the same exact alleyway that she had glanced over through. I went to remake those. And I was successful with, I think, 10 to 12 pairs, or 10 to 12 of her images that I now have a pair to match it. And I think that's sort of what enabled me to go to different parts of the city that I might not have gone to, and sort of explore through almost her eye. And from there, I think I'd branch off into my own path, and or she would visit a park, and I would, walk for an hour this way and find a different park that I sort of sat with and would take pictures at. So I think a lot of it was just based off of where she had gone and where I had wanted to find where she went and track it down.
So if you're starting off with those pairs, how did you know when to click the shutter to fill in the rest of the story? What does the rest of the story say to us as viewers?
Yeah, I think, in making those reproductions, I was capturing, again, a very sort of specific view, a specific time in the city from 18 years ago. And what I actually thought a lot about while I was there was something that a lot of people have thought about before, though, is just what's outside the frame. What's just beyond the click of the shutter into the film. And so I thought a lot about, again, expanding that frame and wanting to expand what the viewer could see, what I could see. Because outside of those photos in the album, I didn't have that much more context. My mom and I sat through those albums too, and I was like, do you remember where this was? And she'd remember some of them, or remember that day or what she did, but a lot of them was sort of, she couldn't remember too well. And so I didn't have a lot of context for a lot of the images, or I didn't know what happened before or what she did right after. So I thought a lot about, again, how can I expand her images? And I think that's what a lot of the images in the show and within the project itself sort of are trying to do, is me expand and to fully understand the photos I'm taking, and to expand the context of where I was and what I was doing, and being descriptive in that sense.
A lot of the images, I mean, when you think about it, it's about intergenerational family. It's about a family that you didn't know, but a culture that is very specifically you, a family that you did, and now you're making your own memories. How did you see to blend all of those together? Is there text that accompanies some of these photos, or is there actual conversations between you and maybe your birth mother, or how did you find a way to seamlessly integrate all of these pieces, and did they solve a mystery for you?
I had a lot of difficulty trying to figure out how, again, all these sorts of narratives and perspectives would sort of fit within, again, the project, and how I would sort of begin to sort them out. One being, again, these archival images that I was referencing that were really important to the structure of my trip and to this project, and to me, again, putting it all out on the table and trying to sort it. Because, again, those archival images were so important to me, and are really what served as these points on the map of soul that I set out to complete in a way. It was kind of hard to figure out how those would fit in, but I think that what I did with the show in particular was I used text that sort of gave some context to the pairing, but also to the pairing acted as this sort of punctuation through the more recent work that I made, that I had made in between referencing the images. Because what I would do is, during my time there, I'd set out to make a reproduction, and then all of the photos that I took in between are sort of what you're seeing in the show. It's me in between these different points on the map. and me sort of creating, again, and shaping my own memories there and trying to fill in the map a little bit more and sort of inserting myself into that map. And so there was some text and the pairings as well, but I think that they sort of work together, again, in tandem, where, again, the reproductions are sort of, they acted as like a guide for me to sort of fill in the rest of the blanks and to provide more context, I guess.
A lot of times when you think about artists that are creating memory-driven bodies of work, you think about it as a warm tone or as a sepia tone, that they're a little bit foggy, but your images are so beautiful and well-crafted. They're vibrant in color. How was that established as the baseline for how you crafted the series?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of my photos, again, in the sort of referencing the old 4x6s that were originally my reference points, I think I wanted to build off of the sort of foggy, the sort of deteriorating C print from like a CVS or something that they were all developed.
Those handheld, beautiful objects that we all have boxes of at home.
Yes, the ones that collect dust.
Yeah, and they slowly change color, but you can remember exactly who's in the photo, or if you can't, you try to create the story for. Yeah,
I think, again, seeing those and feeling like I didn't have a lot of information or context with a lot of them, I set out to, again, make these images that I did have context for, that were really clear to me in that way, where I could see everything and everything was clearly resolved, and you didn't have to necessarily ask about each image if they're not all together. I wanted to essentially provide information in each image that I felt like I didn't have in a lot of these photos from when I was there and from when my mother was there. Because again, relying on memory, it's like you don't always remember things and the photos start to fade, like you said. And I wanted to make pictures that I understood. I wrote I'm a big writer, so I would always jot down things in my notebook I'd carry on me and then go back at the end of a night and write. Just to like a little bit about my day and where I went. I wanted to make pictures that I understood and that hopefully somebody else could understand not being there.
The landscape plays a major role in your images as well. The beauty of the trees or the vibrancy of those cosmos, that field of cosmos. You just want to throw yourselves into the middle of that. So how does landscape fit into this idea, because you also have the cityscapes, right? You've got the architecture, you've got the neon, you have the street scenes. So how do the two blend for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think normally as a photographer, as an artist, I sort of I'm really attracted to like green spaces within a city. I think that's sort of always where I start, because there's something. If it's not, it's something familiar to me. Every city has a green space or some sort of park that's been built or developed. And I don't know, I find myself really attracted to those and wanting to go to like these more vibrant, lively places to sit and to like just observe and listen and to reflect. And I also think too, that's something I explored in tandem to like the larger cityscapes. I think the cityscapes for me, the sort of further pulled back, where you could see the busy streets of Seoul, that was sort of when I first got there, and I wasn't really sure how to navigate the city too much, where I would just go out and walk and sort of wander, and that's sort of the mode I felt like I was working in a lot, until I began to explore more on my own a little bit more comfortably into like parks and stuff like that. For things further from my Airbnb that weren't just a walk down the street. When I figured out how to use the train and like get across the city and yeah.
So how was it immersing yourself in a culture that you sort of did and didn't understand all at the same time? How were you received?
It was I don't want to say challenging, but I think at times there were points where like the language barrier was really tricky, or not really knowing a lot of customs on like eating certain dishes. I think that was a little bit tricky at times. I think, but what I tried to do is I tried to embrace every little bit of it. I tried to immerse myself and be open to new things and to try to do things I might not normally do. I think that was a big part of like this whole sort of expansion and sort of me wanting to explore and let things like unfold before me, which is a lot of how the trip sort of ended up being for me.
Speaking about the journey, talk a little bit about your journey with photography and how did you decide to use the camera as the appropriate tool to tell the story?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, for me, like I started photographing, I think when I was in high school. I had like a little Rebel EOS DSLR. I guess that's when I really got interested in it. I'd follow my friends around who would be skating or playing at like house shows in basements. And I think with that development and that sort of like entry into photography, people and stories have always been something really important to me. It was always something really important to me about my family too, because again, storytelling and the act of storytelling was really special to me. It was, I mean, for a lot of people. So you consider yourself
the family photographer then? Are you then tasked with this at every cookout and family event?
Yeah, I think I took that, at one point I took that on, again, high schooler me. And yeah, so I think with storytelling always being a part of my family, I sort of took that on in my own hands and wanting to, again, sort of create this album of memories and documenting like my life or like my friends' lives or stuff like that.
So how did you end up at MassArt?
I was recommended to MassArt by my photo professor, or my photo teacher in high school. She's like, you should check it out. And at the time I was like, I don't know. I was, thinking about like RIT or something like that. And I applied and I got in. I didn't tour the school and then I showed up the first day. That's kind of how my journey, at least at MassArt, started.
So do you consider yourself a portraitist or do you consider yourself more of a documentarian?
I think at first more of a documentarian. I think I do really enjoy sort of putting together narratives with like a multitude of things like landscapes and sort of setting the stage for everything and sort of shaping this place, and then including things like people or sort of more candid moments. That's, I think, something I've always sort of gravitated towards. With just like all the different pieces, moving pieces, I think the documentary.
So what's next for the series?
It's a good question. I think with delving into this part of my identity and also sort of concluding with trying to figure out what this place could hold for me, what the place meant to me after going there and returning there. I think I sort of want to shift a little bit more towards, again, like having my identity here on the table and trying to, I guess, expand that more.
Does that mean more family photos from the American side of the work, or maybe a different chapter in how that goes forward? Yeah,
I think it definitely would include a little bit, again, I think maybe more portraits, but also like, I think starting to think a little bit more about some more self-portraits, because again, within the project as it sits now, they're very definitive and sort of confrontational. I think I'd like to expand with some of those and to, again, reshuffle everything and sort of try to reorganize everything and yeah.
One of my favorite photos in the exhibition is you standing on the street corner in front of where you were born, correct? That self-portrait. Did you feel as if that was a moment that was encapsulated in time in a way that you can carry that forward and say, I came from here? Did you feel stronger about your identity after, or more empowered after taking that photograph?
I think I definitely felt a little bit stronger with that sort of connection to my identity. I think me sort of placing myself in the center of the frame, just outside, and me being, again, very like confrontational, I think that was a moment I didn't really even expect at one point. It did really make me feel connected to this place. Again, in some of the albums that I do have of me even being in Korea when I was an infant, none of them were very descriptive of me being in Korea. It's like I side by side compared them to images of me here in the States and me in Korea, and you can't tell the difference because it's like a classic sort of baby picture where it's, you know, you can't really see too much beyond that. And I think that image was sort of me responding to the albums from when I was much younger, and sort of me like making the connection to this place and myself, all in the same image.
Thank you so much for this beautiful exhibition, for your thoughtful work, and for the ideas behind it. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity and for having me here with this amazing conversation.
Thanks. And thank you for joining us for this edition of Optics, featured artist in the Griffin Gallery at WinCAM. To You from Seoul by photographer Nick Ortoleva will be on display in the gallery until June 29th and is free and open to the public during WinCAM's regular hours of operation. For more information on the Griffin Gallery at WinCAM or other programs offered by the Griffin or at WinCAM, please feel free to call or email anytime. Thanks for watching.